Modernism was an international cultural movement which affected the literature and arts in the first decades of the 20th century. Modernists were against tradition and Western values. They rejected the heritage of classical literature, interrupted the federation transmission of classical knowledge, literature, arts, and science. What is left is alienation, fragmentation, and disintegration of all our values. Some kind of a wasteland, a heap of broken images. According to modernism, artists must break with tradition, particularly with religious and political views of the past. History is a negative thing, only the present is important. The past is something which can be reshaped in a personal, original, modern way. Modern poetry began with imagism, invented by the American poet Ezra Pound. Imagists used clear and precise images which the poet represents and shows, often in very short but effective poems. Pound followed the tradition of haiku poems written in Chinese and Japanese. These languages are pictographic and replace abstract words and concepts with concrete pictograms. The most famous example is in a station of the metro by Ezra Pound, which is a two-line poem with only object on the front and no verbs. No action, just a still picture, which can be placed anywhere at any time. This Pound moves on from imagism to what he calls vorticism. Now, instead of wanting to get a poetry that is centered on the image, he imagines a poetry centered on now the vortex, as he calls it. Pound is credited with coining the term vorticism. His essay Vortex appeared in Blast in 1914. The vortex is the point of maximum energy. It represents the greatest efficiency, and the greatest efficiency is the persistence as they would used in a textbook of mechanics. The vorticism will use only the primary media of his art. The primary pigment of poetry is the image, and actually, not so much later, he would replace the idea of the vortex with another related image, which is the ideogram. Pound translated a lot from the Chinese and Japanese languages, as the ideograms were perfect for a poet who wanted to image the poem as an image of a thing. The Chinese word was, in fact, an image of a thing, and this is very much a kind of aesthetic ideal for Pound. We wanted the language to give us a kind of immediate access to the thing of the word. Ezra Pound's poem in a station of the metro, it has the honor of being the shortest famous poem in modern poetry. Pound walks through the streets of Paris and sees crowd of people pouring out in the subway. This seems to him to be figures that come from the world of the dead. It is as if the inhabitants of Hades were coming up to occupy what is the world of the living. We have here two elements, joined and compressed, basis and pedal. It's wrong to speak here to metaphor or simile, but later we should use the word that Pound uses, ideogram, borrowing from his ideas about Chinese and Japanese writing. The syntax is compressed, creating a new kind of a perception, and a perception that is modern, urban, of the crowd, but also timeless. We are in Paris, but it could be actually anywhere, and at any time. The time is now the present, these faces. They are here and now. This is self-consciously an image or a picture of modernity, but it's also the picture of underground, that records the classical underworld which we find in Homer, Virgil, Dante and Milton. An epic simile for one of those great poems has been taken out and presented to us in fragmentary form. T.S. Eliot was born in 1888 in Missouri. He studied at Harvard University. In 1910 he moved on to Paris, then to England. In 1914 he met the famous American poet and critic Ezra Pound in London, and with his help began to publish his work. In 1927 Eliot became a British citizen. His masterpiece is The Wasteland. He converted to the Anglican religion and wrote The Lawman, Ash Wednesday and a play Murder in the Cathedral. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1948 and died in London in 1965. Eliot wanted to represent the spiritual sterility of the modern world through a constant comparison with classical voices which he called the mythical method. Eliot's poetic method is based on the use of the objective correlative. who is a set of objects, images, and references that evoke a particular emotion. T.S. Eliot stated that the poet's task is not to represent, not to present, but to represent. It is not to say, but to show. Poetry has to be impersonal, and this is the impersonality of the artist. His famous poem, The Wasteland, is the fragmentation of Eliot's poem. The Wasteland is one example of the modernist poetry and represents the fragmentation of a Western civilization. The Wasteland is set in post-war Europe, especially in the Eastern Empire, which was in decadence. The 20th century can be considered as a heap of broken images. The 20th century witnessed totalitarian regimes, world wars, there was a common sense of frustration, anxiety, and generational conflicts. Eliot's poem is a epic of broken images. It represents a world that has been radically destroyed and made sterile by war and its consequences. Billions of lives have been destroyed by war, and those who have survived feel guilty. What remains of the mythical past is a desolate post-war land, in which life is paralyzed and the future is disintegrated. Eliot's view is deeply nihilistic. There are no clear signs of hope for the entire Western world. The age of modernism suffers from the eclipse of God, of sense of the absolute values which characterized the previous century. Now, absolute truth and all certainties are now shattered. Men's planes in the universe, Victorian values, utilitarianism, respectability, marriage, the power of reason, the dissolution of the empire, the new scientific discoveries. 1 year after the Wasteland was completed, Eliot coined the term mythical method in his article Ulysses, Order and Myth. In his review of Joyce's novel, Eliot explained that the mythical method consisted of creating a continuous parallel between contemporary and antiquity. The poet uses the myths as a common ground that provides meaning and order to the chaotic present era. Instead of using the narrative method, we now use the mythical method. Through the mythical method, Eliot creates a poetic language that tries to give order and meaning to the post-war situation of Europe and the rational and disillusioned Western culture by evoking that ancient, unearthed conscience. Eliot's poem is full of quotes from ancient and classical sources, such as Dante, Shakespeare, and the Bible. All is juxtaposed in an incoherent way and represents the relics of a world that has been destroyed by modernity. Eliot's poem is a series of broken images, which do not tell a definite plot, but the chaos of the modern world, which is characterized by the loss of sense, the absence of real human relationship, and alienation. The only way to make sense is posing a constant comparison between this sterile and meaningless present and a mythical and meaningful past. This is the mythical method. James Joyce was born in Dublin in 1882. He was educated at a Jesuit school, he studied modern languages, he traveled to Paris, and he married Nora Barnacle. They moved to Trieste, he got a job teaching English, and made friends with Italo Svevo. He and Nora had 2 kids, Giorgio and Lucia. They moved to Zurich, and when the World War I broke out, and he died in Zurich. Joyce's main work are Dubliners, who is a collection of 15 short stories about people living in Dublin, who were oppressed by British cultural imperialism, by economic problems, by moral contrast linked to religion, politics, and culture. The dominant theme of the 15 short stories is the failure to find a way out of the paralysis. An epiphany is the sudden manifestation of a hidden or removed truth, a fear, a secret wish. It is a spiritual revelation caused by an external object, an unexpected situation, a song, an image. After the epiphany, the character changes his understanding of himself and the reality around him. An example of Dubliners is Evelyn, that is little Eve, unable to choose, unlike Eve of the Bible, a victim rather than a sinner. The story of a young woman abused by her alcoholic father. She has the chance to live to Buenos Aires with her boyfriend Frank, but she hears a song that reminds her of the melody shared on the day of her mother's death, and this is the moment of the epiphany. Evelyn promises her mother to look after the house and keep the family together. At the dock, where she and Frank are about to embark, Evelyn decides not to leave. Is paralyzed in her horrible life. Another example of Dubliners is the deaf. Gabriel Conroy is a college professor and a literary critic. He embodies what Joyce would have been if he had not escaped Dublin. Gabriel and Greta, who is his wife, are at a Christmas party at Gabriel's aunt, three unmarried women. On that night, Greta hears a song that reminds her about a guy, Michael Fury, who used to sing it and who died for her love when he was 17. Greta seems to be very distant and moved. She's still thinking about that song and that boy. Gabriel asked her, "What did he die for?" Of he died, and she said, "If I think he died for me." Greta's answer is a real epiphany for Gabriel. He has never had anything or anyone to live or to die for. His life suddenly appears to him for what it is, empty, meaningless, purposeless. Michael is the only character who dies in the story, but he proves to be the only person who has truly lived. The final scene, the snow falling, proves that it is possible to distinguish the town from the graveyard, that is, the living from the dead. Another of many works is a portrait of the artist as a young man. It is an autobiographical story of Stephen Dedalus, a young Irish writer that is Joyce's functional double. He is a rebel against his family, his religion, and his nation. Non serviam is his motto, the phrase which Lucifer uttered when he rejected God. Stephen is the first Christian martyr stoned to death for preaching. Daedalus escaped the labyrinth using wax wings, and Stephen is a martyr for art. He goes on a voluntary exile to France to break the rules and live his life as an artist. Ulysses is another main work of Joyce, and it is and in Ulysses, Stephen Dedalus returns to Dublin. He has failed as an artist, now he's only a simple teacher. The story is set in Dublin on a single day, June the 16th, 1904. Stephen has lost his father figure, Simon Dedalus, has cut him out of his life. Another Dubliner's Leopold Bloom, 38 years old, suffers from two emotional crises: the loss of his father and his son, and the infidelity of his wife, Molly Bloom. Stephen, Leopold, and Molly correspond to Telemachus, Ulysses, and his faithful wife, Penelope. According to the mythical method, the 20th century version of Homer's character revealed the clash between a mythical meaningful order past and a fragmented meaningless present. Joyce used to meet he made a constant parallel between antiquity and present time. Every character, every episode is linked to the Odyssey. The stream of consciousness technique described the mental process, made of memories, dreams, impressions, sensations, images, and memories flowing freely. The features of the interior monologue are, in first person, sudden shifts from truth to truth, no connection, no intervention of the ordering mind of the narrator, direct access to the mind to the character, to the idea, feeling at a pre-speech level. Modernists felt that their writing should mirror their fractured and chaotic world. Fragmentation implies a disordered lack of meaning which no omniscient authorial voices can solve. The stream of consciousness portrays a character through the process in a loose interior monologue, depicted as they flow in the mind. Data are collected and connected in the unconscious, subconscious, and preconscious mind. The stream of consciousness is the intersection of psychology and of philosophy by Freud. Samuel Beckett was Irish. He was influenced by French existentialism and in particular by Camus and Sartre. He wrote in two languages. He was a mother tongue English writer, but he knew French very well. When he wrote Vedic Fortago, he did it in French, in Attenta Godot, and it was an instant success. It was later translated into English, and he won a Nobel Prize for Literature in 1969. The historical background of absurdism that is of the theatre of the absurd in World War II. There was a revival of the theme of the drama in British after the Second World War in 1950s, and this new form of drama showed a general rejection of traditional values. Two main trends rose in the post-war drama, anger and absurd. The title of anger first, called Angry Young Men, who were educated playwrights coming from a middle class or working class. They generally supported socialism. Formally, they did not create innovative plays because the plays were realistic. They were traditional and they were innovative with regard to content. The second form of theatre drama was the theatre of the absurd, under the influence of Camus' art, that is the influence of existentialism. The theatre of the absurd is based on the pessimistic view of man's existence. Beckett's plays are influenced by existentialism. The main themes of Beckett's plays, the sense of man's alienation, the cruelty of human's life, the absence of the futility of objectives, the meaninglessness of man's struggle, which is in turn inspired by an essay written by Albert Camus dedicated to the myth of Sisyphus. Samuel Beckett's masterpiece, Waiting for Godot, was not written in his mother language, that is English, but it was first written in French. The general setting of Beckett's plays is that all the characters are trapped in a situation from which they cannot escape. Actually, it's an absurd situation. In traditional drama, there is a story developing in time. There's a setting in place and time. The society is portrayed through the realistic characters, like characters who move, who act in a definite period of time. On the other hand, Waiting for Godot has no story, no plot. Nothing ever happened in Waiting for Godot. On the stage, the characters speak, but they do not really communicate. They do not really act, they don't do anything. In traditional drama, events follow a chronological order. In Waiting for Godot, there is no development in time. There is no past. There is no future. Waiting for Godot is a two-act play, but there's no difference between the first act and the second. Both end with a young man who tells Vladimir and Estegon that Godot will come the following day. All we can see waiting for Godot is a country road and a bird tree. That is, it can be anywhere, anytime. It is a symbolical setting. We didn't know who Godot is. Actually, Beckett never said it was God, but this is what the characters do. They just wait for Godot, it's the main theme of the action. In Waiting for Godot, all we know about the character is that they are tramps. So there's no defined personality, no social class, they just symbolize an existential situation. This character represents two different aspects of the same personality, body, Gogo, and mind, Didi. Vladimir is the one who speaks. He is more intellectual and in fact he always plays with his head. Estegon reminds us of physical activities, and in fact he has problems with his roots. There's another complementary couple, Pozzo and Lucky. Pozzo is the master, the oppressor. Lucky is the power of the mind, but he is the slave. In the second act, the role is reversed. Pozzo is blind and needs Lucky, who has become dumb. So Pozzo and Lucky may remind us of Hegel's master-slave relation. When the characters speak, they are often contradicted by the stage direction. For example, when Vladimir says, "Well, shall we go?" and Estegon agrees, they cannot move, because there's a stage direction. Waiting for Godot and the theatre of absurd is generally prevailed by a grotesque humor that is irony about everything, because everything is meaningless.